It's all well and good to say that Boris Johnson has finally united the country on the issue of the Downing Street Christmas party, but what do we actually do with that? Because yeah, sure, we're all tired of seeing the government act like they're above the rules that we little people have to follow, but that we isn't just lefties and liberals, it includes people who find the idea of a majority Labour government terrifying. See, I remember speaking to some really close family friends just before the 2019 election, both committed Brexit and Conservative voters, and even though I managed to convince them that Boris Johnson's plans for the country would be damaging, they couldn't get past the firm belief that letting Corbyn be Prime Minister would destroy the UK. And we're seeing the same thing now, because even though people on the right of UK politics hate the government's attitude that it's one rule for them and another for the rest of us, their next thought is still the fear of a Labour government with absolute control. Only unlike with Corbyn, they're not stoking fears about having some dangerous vision for the UK. It's more a lack of vision, which is probably part of Starmer's strategy. Shed the Corbyn brand and try not to be too left-wing, so you at least appear non-offensive to people in the centre and maybe centre-right. And that's the problem. There's a huge gap in UK politics where the Conservative Party used to be. Starmer knows it, the Lib Dems know it, and most importantly, millions of traditional Conservative voters know it. They want somebody who'll put business ahead of ideology, and well, And they're also tired of being called racist because they feel they have to vote for somebody who once called black people pickaninnies with watermelon smiles and just released a race report that the United Nations said normalizes white supremacy because they feel that if they don't do that, there'll be a far left uprising. That gap exists because our two-party system forces people to vote more to keep the other party out of power than because they actually like the party they're voting for, meaning we're all disappointed in politics before our votes are even counted. But the people of the UK have always been in that gap. Neither Labour or the Conservatives ever gets more than half of the vote, and yet our voting system always gives one of them absolute power, which means the majority of votes mean nothing in almost every election. It also means we never get a government that reflects the balance of who we are as a country. And it means that politicians in safe seats know that they can get away with anything and walk straight back into Parliament and therefore into government at the next election, because what are you going to do? Vote for that other scary party? So what's the solution to a government that's playing us all for mugs when we, the pissed off people, have different political views? We need a voting system that lets us vote for parties outside of the big two without fearing that by doing so, we're letting that party that we really don't like gain absolute power. And to be clear, under a proportional voting system where every vote counts equally, it'll be rare for either Labour or the Conservatives to get a majority of the seats in Parliament, and you shouldn't want them to. Because if a party with a minority of the vote can pass any law they like without having to convince even a single member of the parties voted for by the majority, that's not democracy. That's something else. So how do we fix it? Because the Tories aren't going to do it. Statistically, this system works for them because the left-wing vote is much more split than the right-wing vote. So no matter how angry you are now, they're not scared of you. As for Labour, they need to commit to introducing proportional representation within 12 months of taking office, because that will enable them to do an electoral pact with the other parties that want real democracy, get in and get it done. And honestly, if they don't do that, I won't be voting Labour. Why? Because I've got my whole life ahead of me. I've only been engaged in politics for about 5 years, and I'm already sick of it. We have a population that's somewhere in the middle, yet we keep bouncing between what people see as extremes, and our politics gets more extreme as a result. I'm sick of the idea that anyone with a different viewpoint is a threat to you because only one candidate can win in any given constituency. That's what makes our politics so toxic and angry. And I'm sick of politicians feeling they can do whatever they want without any consequences. So if you're a Conservative voter, you probably disagree with me on Brexit and a bunch of other issues. You probably think I'm just another loudmouth lefty who doesn't know what he's talking about, and that's okay. But we both need politics to get better, right? So the priority has to be getting Labour to shift on voting reform and getting Labour and the Lib Dems to agree not to compete against each other at the next election. So join whichever party you've got the stomach for to make that happen. I mean this genuinely. We, as a people, were supposed to have taken back control. Well, do you feel in control? Do you feel like the politicians running things are really working for you? Or does it feel like they're having a party at your expense? So what are we going to do about it?